Hello again. Happy Tuesday on a week of Thanksgiving, a time where we reflect and think about the things for which we're most thankful. So, come on into my little world for a moment and let's think about some reasons for giving thanks. I came across in my reading an event that took place in the very early days of the church that involved Peter and John. If you remember there in the book of Acts, they were hauled before the council, the same council that had brought about the death of Jesus. And there they were accused and questioned, let go, later brought in again. This time before the council, they were, of course, threatened. Said, didn't we tell you not to preach anymore in the name of this man, Jesus? And they said, we need to listen to God rather than men. Before they let them go, they decided that they would give them a thorough beating. It wasn't fair, it wasn't right, it wasn't just. They didn't have any real justification for it, but they did it anyway. But they did that. They beat them, commanded them they should not speak anymore in the name of Jesus, and they let them go. Verse 41 of Acts chapter 5 says, so they departed from the presence of the council, rejoicing that they were counted worthy to suffer shame for his name. Perhaps they could have gotten out of it. Perhaps they could have avoided it. Perhaps they could have humbled themselves before the council, but they didn't do it. And aren't you thankful we've got people like that? People that we can look to, very special people. Another thing I was reading this morning was about the Pilgrims. There was a large article in the paper this morning about the so-called Pilgrims, the ones at Plymouth Rock, trying to correct some of the myths, some of the ideas that were there. You know, if you were like me, when you were a child, you were taught about the Pilgrims in Plymouth Rock and the hardships that they endured and how that they were helped by some of the Native American tribes that were there. And they celebrated late in the year, October to November, they celebrated with a great feast. There's a more accurate story that has been written. But you know, as children, we loved the story. We loved the story. We loved what was going on. We loved the celebration that follows and the remembrance of those earliest things. And then a reminder that we've got a reason to give thanks, even in the midst of hardship. Great story, great things, even if it's not very accurate. Sometimes it just kind of hurts when you find out something's not really as accurate as you think, that really that the Pilgrims had not invited the Native Americans to come over and have food with them, but maybe they heard some of the guns shouting at a kind of celebration was taking place, and the Indians came, the Native Americans that is, came ready to fight with them, only to find out it really wasn't a war party. And then ultimately they did all kind of come to some sort of peace and shared what food they had together and went on their way. But it wasn't but some big celebration about their friendship and their relationship. Got to take some of the air out of it, doesn't it? I'm thankful when we don't rewrite history. Not to give an inaccurate history, that's not what I mean. But I'm thankful when we come along and we find that history is what it is, and that we've heard good stories. And I'm thankful that we have people like Peter and John who would stand up for what they believe. And then there's the story of a young man during the Revolutionary War. In 1776, a 21-year-old man, 21 years old, volunteered to go behind enemy lines in the city of New York. There he studied and watched the troop movements and tried to get word back to General Washington and his army about the movements of the troops that were there. In the midst of all the things that was going on and the battles and the conflicts that took place there in that area of New York, he ultimately was captured. Some say he was turned in by some of his own family. Some say he was found out by a compatriot and turned in. I don't know that it really matters exactly how they found out who he was, but they found out who he was, and the British took him into custody. And under the rules and regulations of their time, if you were found to be a spy, you ultimately were hanged. This 21-year-old man, 21 years old, taken in. And by all records, he comported himself well, stood up to exactly what was there, maybe even admitted to who and what he was. You probably heard his name. And we're not going to rewrite history about him, but you've heard his name. There are schools named after him. There are monuments. There are special things. His name was Nathan Hale. And Nathan Hale gave something of a speech before he died. And we may not know exactly what he said. There's no exact or official recording of exactly what he said, but even the British that watched him thought carefully about some of the things that he said. The most common form of what he had to say concluded with these words, "I only regret that I have but one life to lose for my country." Whether those were the exact words that crossed his lips or not, they were the intent of his heart. There may have been another form of them, but he said something to that effect. And his willingness to die for his country, to count the cause worthy, is something that you and I draw and benefit today. So when you think about the things for which you're thankful, maybe you look at your life and your health and so many other things that are round about you, your family, your friends, and the list could be endless. Let's think about a little bit about real history, and maybe even think about somebody like a 21-year-old Nathan Hale, who was willing to surrender his life with honor for the country that you and I enjoy and love today. Peter and John, they stood up for the Lord. Oh, there's reason to give thanks, isn't there? No matter what's going on, whether it's Peter and John or Nathan Hale, or maybe all of them that we remember, I think we do have a reason to give thanks, don't you? It's a great Tuesday. I look forward to sharing more with you down the road. But remember, it's a good week to be giving thanks.